Hey, what's up, everybody? I want to welcome you to another episode of the Dreamers Pro Daily Recap, where we give you a recap of all of the hot topics that we covered that day. You can catch them in their long format and also catch it fully streaming for free on Apple Podcasts. Yesterday, we reacted to some comments that Mark Cuban made in defense of Steve Ballmer. I want to quickly read what he said. He says, I am Team Ballmer. I'm on Team Ballmer. As much as I wish that they circumvented the salary cap, first, Steve isn't that dumb. If he tried to feed Kawhi Leonard money, knowing what is at stake for him personally and his team, do you think he would have let the company go bankrupt, knowing all creditors would be visible to the world? They got scammed by aspiration, along with many others, crimes for which they pleaded guilty last week. Scammers do scammy things. They did a $300 million sponsorship deal with the Clippers in 2021. That's a huge deal. The better the team does, the more valuable the sponsorship value the sponsorship has. It actually makes perfect sense that if they stole money from investors and want the Clippers to succeed, why not give the stolen money to keep their best player? It is sad that Pablo Torre didn't take time to find out how these scammers pull off their scam. The idea that the default is Ballmer is a bad guy is going to backfire on him. And then not too long ago, he also said this on Twitter in response to the sit down that him and Pablo Torre had that he posted on Twitter. Cuban said the following: Pablo, come on, you only pushed your side in the promos. Nothing you said made your point. You took lots of information provided by scammers who negotiated with someone not connected with Ballmer and then took them at face value. Just to be clear, still Team Ballmer. So that's what he had to say. So I woke up this morning and apparently Steve Ballmer actually went out there to discuss this issue during a sit down that he had with Ramona Shelburne on ESPN. And I saw bits and pieces of it on Instagram. So when I was able to actually watch the full video, I'm like, okay, this is something that we actually need to talk about because this is one of the people that's being accused of doing dirty dealings. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to play what Ballmer had to say to Ramona Shelburne. I want you guys to listen to it carefully, and then we're going to come back and react to his comments. Take a listen to Steve Ballmer here.
You guys said that these allegations are provably false. So how do you prove that?
Well, if you start and think, let's pick up from the point about what the rules are. You say, okay, we know what the rules are. Was there an exception made in terms of our relationship with aspiration? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is a company that I got to know, frankly, through them approaching us about a sponsorship deal. My family and I were super keen to do work to stem climate change. We think that's an important thing. I was in the process of even changing the design of Intuit Dome so that we could be carbon neutral. And then we meet this company that focuses in on an aspect of carbon neutrality. To me, it seemed like a match, kind of made in heaven, if you will. And then they offered us an unbelievable sum of money, $330 million. That by itself, one of the biggest sponsorship deals ever done. And it wasn't naming rights. We had turned them down on the naming rights deal because we liked Intuit, blah, 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 but they didn't offer even more money. So we had a fantastic deal with a company that fit with stuff we care about personally. And because I was enthusiastic, I read their business plan. Remember, they defrauded me. They defrauded many other investors much bigger than me. But I read the business plan and said, hey, this makes sense to support them, to support us. We made an investment in the company. So all fine. I had no control over this company. That is important, actually, under the salary cap rules. I owned less than 3% of the company. There were investors who put in a lot more money than I did. I had no board seat. I had no control. Heck, it was a fraudulent company. It's possible nobody had any control. And now you look back and say, could I believe anything they said? Could their employees have been believing anything they said? I don't know. But at the time, it was an exciting deal for us to go do. Now, we had already signed our deal with Kawhi Leonard. We signed that in August of 21. It was a 4-year deal, 4th year at his option. It was the most that we could pay him. That was the most we could do it under the rules, if you will. I've been excited about that, even though we knew Kawhi had to rehab a year from a torn ACL. So, you know, kind of okay, this is going to work. This is really going to work, and it did. All done. I remember where I was. We're very excited. That would have been August. In September, we got the deal done for sponsorship and investment. We announced that. And at that time, we hadn't even introduced Aspiration hadn't asked, or we hadn't introduced for sure, Kawhi to Aspiration. We were done. They were done. We were done with Kawhi. We were done with Aspiration. The deals were all locked and loaded. Then they did request to be introduced to Kawhi under the rules. We can introduce our sponsors to our athletes. We just can't be involved. We made an introduction. That was in early November, well past when all of this happens. We had a chance recently to go through all of our relations with Aspiration. This is where you get to kind of how you prove this stuff. We, as part of our cooperation with the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission, we had produced texts, emails. We'd already gone through all this stuff because it was part of document production in their investigations. And we even found the email that makes the first introduction. It was early November. I won't remember the exact date. So where could any of this circumvention have happened? It didn't. It couldn't have. The introduction got made, and then they were off to the races on their own. We weren't involved. I eventually learned that they had reached a deal. I have no idea what the deal was.
So, but you see how this looks to the average fan, right? You're invested in the company. It's $50 million as your investment. You're part of the biggest raise that they have as part of the whole building of that company. Then your star player gets a contract for $28 million. He's not required to do anything as part of that contract. He doesn't actually do anything to promote their company. And he signs an extension with you guys right in and around the same time. Like you can see it looks like what it looks like.
Let's talk to the fan. We signed that deal with Kawhi before any of this, before Kawhi even knows these people. We've signed our deal. That's high integrity. We made our deal with Aspiration. Literally, I had no control over the company. Literally, even when I invested, I think there was somebody who put in 6 times as much money as I did. No control. And that's okay. The average fan should understand that. And they went off and made a deal. I don't know what the deal is. I know what the reports are with the speculation. I don't know what the deal is or was. And frankly, I can't even tell you whether it's this much different, that much different, or not different at all from some of the other endorsement contracts that athletes do. In terms of amount, I don't know. I actually don't know the amounts of most endorsement deals. But when you look at Forbes magazine and they talk about the highest paid athletes, many of those top athletes, as Kawhi was a top athlete, is a top athlete, you read those things and they say they make up more off endorsements than they do their, very large salaries.
Fantastic. So you heard what he had to say. After listening to that sound, and I listened to it a few times, I came to the conclusion that Ballmer is saying, this has nothing to do with me. This has nothing to do with me. What he is also saying is that all of the Clippers dealings with Kawhi Leonard were 100% above board. They were all clean, and we have no issues. We're not involved in this madness. We paid him his contract contractually. I also don't know what happened between them, Kawhi's representation and Aspiration. And he said, I don't know. He said, I got scammed out of $50 million. It's a loss that I took. And what people are trying to say is this. They're trying to say Ballmer gave Aspiration this money as a pass-through to give Kawhi Leonard that money. They're saying Ballmer and the Clippers wanted to give Kawhi Leonard an additional, first the figure was 28, now we're hearing $28 million. But since they couldn't do that under the salary cap, he then said, okay, I'll invest $50 million in you guys, and then you guys take that money and give it to Kawhi Leonard. All right? But then Cuban is saying, wait a minute. If the goal was to make sure that the sponsorship continued to work, you would want to ensure that Kawhi Leonard is happy. So the money that you stole from all of these people, why didn't you just give it to Kawhi Leonard? So Ballmer's saying, we gave Kawhi Leonard his deal with the Clippers. That's fair and square. Nobody's arguing that. He's also saying, whatever Kawhi and his team signed off with Aspiration outside of us, I have no knowledge of it. He said, because I don't even know who these people are because I got scammed by them. Now, Ramona Shelburne is saying, well, wait a minute. Wait a bloody minute. You're a billionaire. You're a very smart business guy. You're one of the 10 richest people in the world. Are you telling me you didn't do your due diligence to ensure that you didn't get scammed by these people? And he's saying that sometimes it happens. Sometimes it happens. Now, there's an important question we have to ask ourselves, which is this. Do you think Ballmer would be willing to risk his reputation just to keep Kawhi Leonard? This is a question we have to ask. Is he willing to risk his reputation for $50 million just to keep Kawhi Leonard? Is he willing to do that? This is the question. Now, you can come to your own determination on that. Right? And then the next question we have to ask, well, this person, if you're saying that he's willing to do so, does he have any track record of doing something like this before? Then people can point to the thing with I think DeAndre Jordan and all of those different things. You can point to those cases as well. They even brought it up in the Pablo Torre sit down that he had with Mark Cuban. I don't know. But based on what's being reported here, Ballmer is simply saying the following. I don't know what went on between those people over there. I paid Kawhi Leonard his salary, meaning the Clippers. I got scammed out of $50 million. That's all I know. Now, we haven't heard back from Kawhi Leonard's camp yet. And at a certain point, they ought to. And if they're not, they're probably lawyering up or something like that. But in the other video we did, you could see that Kawhi Leonard's names and correspondence between Aspiration and the Clippers and all of that was a real thing. The whole thing is a mess. A bloody mess. And I think this story is just getting started. And we're going to be here for every bit of it. So Kawhi Leonard, Steve Ballmer, and the Clippers are in the news for all the wrong reasons. All the wrong reasons right now. And Kawhi Leonard's integrity is in question right now. Serious question. Because the reports are the following. Essentially, this company, Aspiration, got Kawhi Leonard a deal or whatever, a sponsorship for $28 million, and Ballmer invested, I think, $50 million, and that money was supposed to go to Kawhi, and he was supposed to do nothing. He wasn't supposed to do anything and all of that. So that's kind of been the conversation. And what I've been trying to understand is, did Kawhi Leonard, in fact, do this? Right? Is there truth to this? Now, Pablo Torre has provided various nuggets of evidence, like, the stipulation in the contract that says that one of the clauses that he has to remain a Clipper and all of just crazy stuff. So this morning I was watching a conversation between Pablo and Mark Cuban, who had also said some things on the internet. So Mark Cuban went on the show to talk to him. So they're talking, and I think around the 20-minute mark, they get to the part where Pablo begins to outline or trot out some of the pieces of evidence against Kawhi Leonard, where they were showing Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers' involvement in this deal. And what he started showing was email correspondences. They started to show the part where Kawhi Leonard, you can even see his signature signing off on this deal with the company that they created, I think KL12 or something like that. And I'm like, wait a minute. They showed his, so Kawhi actually signed on. He signed it. If what they're showing is real, Kawhi actually inked that deal. So Kawhi actually said, I'm going to sign up for this $28 million and I don't have to do anything. And you could actually see his signature based on what Pablo presented in emails between the Clippers and these guys. I'm like, this is absolutely insane and devastating evidence. Devastating evidence. So what we want to do now is we want to play what Pablo had to say to Mark Cuban. And at various points, we want to show you the pieces of evidence, the email correspondences, and Kawhi Leonard's signature with the company and all of that. So I want you guys to watch it, be on the lookout for those various pieces of evidence, and then we're going to come back and continue on the show. Take a listen and watch this.
In that same case of DeAndre Jordan, which of course involved you with the Mavs and Steve Ballmer with the Clippers, why was Steve Ballmer's Clippers team fined $250,000 by the NBA for reportedly, offering a Lexus endorsement, arranging a Lexus endorsement, according to reporting, to DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even remember that part happening. That part I don't even recall.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
it did happen, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying it didn't, right? That would have been dumb. Like, look, if I'm wrong on this and you're right, then Steve is not as smart as I think he is.
Well, I'm team bricks, Mark, I guess is what I'm saying here. I'm team bricks based on the reporting, right? So can I don't want to cut you off because I actually want to know what you're about to say. I just feel like a really smart guy can be so desperate to get a star player that justifies the entire mission of opening a privately funded stadium to compete with the Lakers specifically, who were competing with him. And in fact, when it comes to a bunch of scammers who maybe he didn't know were scammers in 2021, but clearly saw them as aligned with him on, we're going to help you do what you want, to the point of him helping with business development. The whole idea of, did he have zero idea that these guys that he was dealing with on a day-to-day basis, CCing with the CEO of Intuit, according to emails that we found, is it possible that that guy would have no idea that they were paying $28 million for a no-show job to the guy who was his most valuable employee, while there was also simultaneously in that same timeline a $300 million 23-year contract being struck between the company Aspiration and Steve's baby, the Los Angeles Clippers, that also had in the document that we acquired the contractual language outs at every turn for him to not do anything. And in fact, none of it was ever reported until today. You're saying that that's plausible to you?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, look, the that happened at the Mavs that I had no idea was happening. And people didn't think that that was marginally feasible because you can't pay attention to everything and every deal that you do.
Why did Kawhi Leonard take less money, do you think?
Maybe he had that deal in hand and that was his reason. I don't know.
Because I have 7 sources that say it was to circumvent the salary cap, plus the documentation that suggests that that's exactly what happened.
Well, the documentation is the contract you're talking about that says if he no longer plays for the Clippers, right?
Yeah, among other things,
Yeah. I mean, I can make the same argument that the scammers benefit as much because of their sponsorship.
Wait, can you explain that one?
So in every huge sponsorship deal, you get tickets, you get appearances, you get all kinds of ancillary shit, right? And the better the team, the more valuable that is, right? All of our sponsors are going to want to have access to Cooper Flag. Everybody wanted access to Luka, no matter what, right? And part of us getting those bigger deals was giving people access. And so the better the team, the better the stars, the better the value of the sponsorship.
So are you in dispute at all that the deal Kawhi signed in that document, as reported, to the extent that you've seen it, that clearly was to circumvent the cap? It's merely that Ballmer was not aware of it. That's the argument that you're making then.
Right. So
who would have known about it at the Clippers then?
Who would have known? Well, wait, no, I don't think anybody knows about it necessarily at the Clippers.
Nobody would have known about the fact that Kawhi Leonard?
So my logic is different than yours.
So you saw it for yourselves. This is crazy. Now, I won't lie to you. I don't understand why one would do something like this when you're already getting paid tens of millions of dollars to play in the NBA. The only way this makes sense to me is that my understanding and how I process these type of things is totally different from how these athletes and these sports teams process information. In your mind, you're thinking, well, if I'm earning $30 million a year, that's a very good enough salary. Why would I then need to go and do these things that could potentially get me in trouble later on? That's how a normal person will look at it. But these guys are looking at it from a different standpoint. 30 million is great, but 50 would be better. Right? $120 million contract is fantastic. $160 million contract would be even better. Or $70 million contract, right? And if I can get some of that under the books, then I might as well go ahead. And depending on the orders in which you're watching these shows today, we already dropped the show. Oh, no. Depending on the order, you can even hear NBA players saying that, like Kendrick Perkins and others saying that this is absolutely normal. And they themselves would have done it. And their thing is like, why wasn't this guy protected more by his representation? Why didn't they do their due diligence so this guy wouldn't have to face situations like this if they were to occur? And I'm like, what is going on here, folks? This is absolute madness. But apparently, this is what happened. This is what happened. And I'm like, I don't know what to say now in terms of how does it make you feel about Kawhi? Don't make me feel uncomfortable. I used to be a huge Kawhi. I was supporting Kawhi Leonard all the way up to 2017, man. But ever since he got to the Clippers, there's been one disappointment after the other. It's been very difficult rooting for Kawhi. And then after, like, not last year, the year before, I just checked out. I'm like, okay, whatever, man. Whatever. If Kawhi Leonard does well, he has a great season, fantastic. If not, whatever, man. I moved on from it emotionally. It doesn't make any sense to keep supporting this nonsense where a player shows up and he doesn't play and all of that. It's like, I had enough. I'm going to step away from this situation and I'm done with it in terms of the supporting for Kawhi. I'm not going to hold my breath. Is Kawhi going to be healthy this year? I'm not doing none of that. Right? So that's why I am emotionally in terms of a connection to Kawhi Leonard. That's why I'm just like, whatever. We talked about it yesterday. I'm like, whatever. Bit apathetic about it altogether. Right? But you guys let me know what you think, because I think this is devastating. Devastating. The biggest story right now in the NBA is the scandal surrounding Kawhi Leonard and Steve Ballmer with the Clippers, where essentially Kawhi and these guys are being accused of trying to circumvent the salary cap and receiving money under the table. The first figure that was stated was $28 million. Now they're saying $50 million, whatever. So yesterday I came across some sound from the Dan Le Batard show, who was reacting to the story, but was also reacting to what Mark Cuban said yesterday on the internet. I think it's also important to say that I've been watching the sit down that Mark Cuban is having with Pablo Torre. And Mark Cuban also responded to some of what has been going on, I think, post their interview. But I just want to quickly read what Mark Cuban said yesterday. He said, "I'm Team Ballmer. As much as I wish they circumvented the salary cap, first, Steve isn't that dumb. If they did try to feed Kawhi Leonard money, knowing what was at stake for him personally and his team, do you think he would let the company go bankrupt, knowing all creditors would be visible to the world? They got scammed by aspiration along with many others, crimes for which they pled guilty last week. Scammers do scammy things. They did a $300 million sponsorship with the Clippers in 2021. That's a huge deal. The better the team does, the more valuable the sponsor has. It actually makes perfect sense that if they stole the money from the investors and want the Clippers to succeed, why not give the stolen money to keep their best player? It is sad that Pablo Torre didn't take the time to find out how these scammers pulled off their scam. The idea that the default is Ballmer is the bad guy is going to backfire on him." So that's what he said. Then I just came across this post that he published not too long ago, and he's saying this in response to Pablo Torre's watched the full episode of him and Cuban, and he said, "Pablo, come on. You only push your side in the promo. Nothing you said made your point. You took lots of information provided by scammers and negotiated with someone not connected with Ballmer and then took them at face value. Just to be clear, still Team Ballmer," right? And then some people reacted to what he had to say. So I came across this clip yesterday of Dan Le Batard and his crew reacting, I think, not Stugat, someone else, reacting to what Mark Cuban said, and they were very, very unhappy with the tone and the approach of Mark Cuban. So take a listen to what Dan Le Batard and these guys had to say in response to Mark Cuban's first tweet that I just read to you guys.
I wanted to ask David Sampson about this because Chris Mannix has talked to a series of NBA executives. This story is going to continue to grow. I know football is going to continue to overwhelm all in its path, but one Eastern Conference executive says, quote, "This is a huge deal." A Western Conference general manager says, "Bad for them, very bad. The NBA will be pissed about this. If it's true, the punishment will be worse than what happened in Minnesota with Joe Smith." NBA officials are furious about these allegations, according to a source with the league office telling SI, "If this is what it looks like, I think Adam has to make an example of them." I don't think this is going to be a small deal, but Mark Cuban, as is his wont in protection of these people that he cares about, the owners, and a sport he cares about, because I imagine Mark Cuban right now is sort of frustrated. All the money in the world, I understand. But he loved that thing in a way he didn't love anything else. It was his identity, and he could be Shark Tank and everything else, but they trade Luka, and he doesn't have any control over that. Like, whatever his dreams were to own the toy that was the Dallas Mavericks, he exceeded them, but now he's old, and basketball hasn't left him behind, but the Dallas Mavericks and his identity make it so that he's the first one out on behalf of the owners to question 7 months of investigation by Pablo Torre, and begins with, "If you'd taken the time These rich people are burying media because they've got all the money in the world. And Pablo took 7 months of time to establish what Mark Cuban says he couldn't establish that Ballmer didn't know. David Sampson, you're an expert in this field. How could Ballmer possibly not know that $28 million was going to circumvent the cap so that they could get Kawhi Leonard?
Allegedly.
So a couple of things. When we were sitting in that room with Pablo, Amin, El Hassan, and myself, when we did the show, Pablo didn't tell us what the show was, didn't tell us what was going on. There were documents, and all of a sudden, live, we are looking at these documents, and it's all there. And Mark Cuban may or may not have watched the episode. Certainly, judging by his tweet, he had not. He had only watched the 4-minute clip on Twitter along with the other 25 million people. But Steve Ballmer gave money, invested money in this company, Aspiration. It's right there. It is a publicly filed document right there. And then the company did a deal with Kawhi Leonard for $28 million. Can you imagine Kawhi Leonard getting $28 million to endorse anything, but a company that already was giving money to Leonardo DiCaprio and Drake and Orlando Bloom and Cindy Crawford and Kaya Gerber, on and on and on. Robert Downey Jr., for crying out loud, did a commercial, and all of them made a tiny percentage of Kawhi Leonard? Do you think that the heads of Aspiration said, hey, we've got an investor in our company who owns the Clippers. Should we ask him whether Kawhi Leonard would be a good pitch person to plant a frickin' tree? Nah, let's not bother asking him. Give me a break. Of course Steve Ballmer knew. It's absurd to think that he would not have known. We had players who did deals with sponsors of our team for like a few shekels, like the corner grocery store in Hialeah or a car dealer local. Yeah, you get 25 grand in a car, big whoop,
Yeah,
don't
but
care.
you don't have a salary cap. You don't have a salary cap, though.
But I'm saying that even we would know about the little stuff. If one of our players were doing a $28 million deal with a company that we had an investment in,
David,
it belies all credibility.
All right, so David, help me with this part, which is within your expertise, which is why you're a part of the episode with Pablo Torre. These things have to be heavily lawyered. You have to be able to prove these things. The money will bury you, and it is dangerous to do what Pablo is doing because the money does not like when this is done to them. Steve Ballmer is the 6th richest man in the world, wants to win with a laughingstock franchise, and according to what seems to be proof, what looks like proof, allegedly, he's got a deal that has a whole bunch of fraud in it. And while Kawhi Leonard did have a New Balance deal, you can tell me what he's actually gotten in endorsements, $28 million, and to be so sloppy about it that he doesn't even send out a tweet of him planting a tree or have somebody go out and just hashtag aspiration, just a social media account, pay 10 tweets, something that suggests you're earning that money. Take us through, David, as quickly as you can with as much expertise as you can, what Mark Cuban did yesterday, because he doesn't have facts if he thinks Pablo Torre doesn't have this story pinned down.
So you heard what he had to say. Here are my thoughts. I think that Dan Le Batard is, first of all, trying to credit Pablo Torre for doing an excellent job with his investigative journalism. I think he's going to also support a journalist, which makes perfect sense, which is one of the reasons why I don't understand why so many people are saying, well, Ballmer's going to support a billionaire, but people are going to support their own factions, man. NBA players are going to support NBA players. This group is going to support that group. I just think it's human nature, right? Everybody's going to support their own various constituencies. But as it pertains to this issue here, it seems like Cuban is willing to put his neck on the line and go out there and discuss this publicly. As I said, I was watching some of the interview. It's about an hour and 20-minute interview. I didn't get a chance to go through it because we had other content that we need to prepare for you guys here today. But it seems like he still feels as if that Pablo is only looking at this thing from one vantage point. Hence the comments he just published online where he's essentially saying that, look, you're only looking at this from one angle and you're getting a lot of information from, let me go back to his tweet where he says, you took lots of information provided by scammers who negotiated with someone not connected to Ballmer. So what he's saying is you're taking everything that these guys are saying at face value and you're just going with it. But when it comes time to Ballmer, you're just assuming that this guy must have been doing something shady based on the fact that history has shown that teams have gone above and beyond to land star players when they want them. That's what the interview, I mean, those are one of the central points that Pablo Torre was making in the sit down that he had with Mark Cuban. He was essentially saying that teams are willing to go to any extent to sign these players, right? And he's saying that smart people can also make unethical decisions. Well, and in the case of Cuban, he's saying, yeah, that's true, but it also could be that smart people can also get scammed, right? He's also saying that, and I read through the comments and all of that. So this bombshell story dropped surrounding Steve Ballmer and Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers trying to circumvent the NBA salary cap and essentially breaking the rules, right? And, you know, a lot of people are talking about this. This is a major, major scandal right now that's going down in the NBA, has already started to conduct their investigation. And we've heard from various people, mostly we heard from journalists and independent guys in media. But the one group we haven't heard from yet, or we hadn't heard from at the time, was from NBA players. Right? We didn't get a sense to hear what these guys think. Now, why is that important? Because essentially, this case is about a team going under the table to circumvent the rules and a player willing to accept money that he shouldn't be receiving, which also speaks to the ethics of the NBA players as well. So I was very keen to kind of hear what players are going to say about this. So I tuned into this episode of Road Tripping from their podcast with Shannon Fry, Kendrick Perkins, and Richard Jefferson. And from the onset, Richard Jefferson clearly stated he would have done it too. And then when it came time for Kendrick Perkins to speak, he decided to take it a step further and say, look, this goes on all the time in the NBA. And I'm like, well, the curtains are finally dropping. Take a listen to what these folks had to say here.
So two things. You want the medium picture or the big picture first?
The medium.
Okay.
Big. We all go big.
Right. So here's the thing. One, I believe that Kawhi Leonard is getting too much heat for this shit. Right? Any player would have taken that shit. That shouldn't be on Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard, when he's negotiating a contract, and this is how it happens with all players who's negotiating deals. They have an agent in place who I believe is Uncle Dennis for Kawhi Leonard. I may be wrong, but I believe it's Uncle Dennis. Uncle Dennis he represents Kawhi Leonard. Okay? When you sign a contract extension or you sign with a new team, how many pages is that?
Lots.
Who on this, Richard, have you ever looked through your entire contract?
I can lie to you. I can lie to you and say yes.
You can lie. Okay. Janet, you know what? You might have. You might have.
He can't eat chicken without choking. He definitely read his whole contract.
What? I don't even like reading.
Bro, I've never read my entire contract. That's why you have an agent in place, right? An agent finding things like, hey, we got the deal. Here's some of it, right? Here's the contract, but I got to go change paragraph such and such on page such and such because I don't like this, right? The agent job is to make sure, one, they protect you, and two, get you max amount of dollars, right? Like, you got to get your bread. Now, Kawhi signed on the dotted line, right? Pretty sure it was like, hey, we're going to add this extra incentive. We can't max you out. We need to keep this money. This is how we're going to do it. Kawhi is doing nothing else that nobody else in the league does as far as when they sign their paperwork. All I'm saying is, again, look who's running the organization outside of Steve Ballmer. Here we go. Lawrence Frank once again. Lawrence Frank once again. Right? I've been on here. No one trusts Lawrence Frank. All of a sudden, Lawrence Frank, who's running the organization under Steve Ballmer, this comes out. Okay, cool. But the Clippers need to be getting more heat about this than Kawhi Leonard does. Okay, that's number one. Big picture. Allie, is no integrity no more. I tell my wife this all the time. Vanity is so green to the world. Nothing in this world, when you're being successful, and it goes to show you that billionaires cut side deals in whatever they do. Billionaires have under the table going on every single day. That's how they get ahead. When it comes down to even in our talk about trades, right? Like when we talk about how a team stole a player and doing free agency, right? Agents cut side deals. Hey, I will get you such and such if you re-sign and max out this guy. Like, underhand deals happen all the time, not just in the sports world, but in America. No one has ever gotten ahead by being honest. You can't make me believe that. No one. It's always something, whether it's, I'm not saying they're cheating, I'm not saying they're doing nothing illegal, but you can get ahead by the relationships. People take for granted when they say, oh yeah, it's who you know, not what you know. Well, no, even when you look at, no, but see, here goes some real here. If you want to keep it a buck in the media landscape, a lot of personalities are represented by the top dogs. Top dogs, relationships matter, right? So it's not like, let's not everybody who got something to say, the Kawhi Leonard scandal. No, side deals go on all the time in the United States.
So you heard what they had to say. What I think these guys are saying is most fans live in a bubble, in the sense that they live in a false reality. And they're really exposing you guys to what really goes on. Even the moderator said, well, there are no ethics. He's like, no, there aren't. No, there aren't, because the goal is to make as much money as you can. Now, if you listen to Kendrick Perkins, essentially what he's saying is that what Kawhi did is not outside the norm. He's saying that, and that's why he's saying you shouldn't be so hard on Kawhi, because guys do this all the time. But what they're also saying is that Kawhi's representation didn't do a good enough job in protecting him. They're not saying that Kawhi Leonard is this a scoundrel, because they're saying that this happens all the time. They're admitting it. Not one person in this sound, 2, 3, Kendrick, Channing, Richard. They're all saying that this is standard behavior in the NBA. And Kendrick tried to make a macro point, which was this happens in various industries, right? And that's true as well. Like there's quid pro quo, and I can't even say the damn term. This happens all the time, right? So you have that aspect of it. To me, I think that this is turning into, like, you know, you got the Epstein files, like the Kawhi Leonard files. I think that if this thing blows up, it could have massive implications. Why? Well, if we're going to investigate this one, Pablo just recently said the next contract he may look into is Jalen Brunson's contract with the Knicks. As you guys know, he deferred some money. He decided to take less money to allow more space under the cap to sign other guys, right? Well, he's like, well, maybe we need to look into that. Well, while you at it, let's look into everything. Go back and look into the 2011 Miami Heat. Look into Clutch Sports and their relationship to LeBron and how there's no tampering connections there. How is that possible? How is that possible? How is Clutch Sports even able to operate? You have that instance there. You could really, if they really want to go in depth with this, they should go all the way. They should go all the way, and I'm not sure the NBA wants that. Because then what we're going to be dealing with is corruption in sports, which is even bigger than Kawhi Leonard. But do you really believe that everything that you see and everything that they tell you is true? Are you really that naive? Are you really that naive? For Kawhi Leonard to allegedly have done what he did, and for these guys to say it's normal, it means that this must happen all the time. All the time. And to have NBA players say, I'm not saying it. A journalist isn't saying it. They're saying it. I think then that should be the wake-up call to a lot of fans. It's like, wake up, smell of cocoa, welcome to reality. This is the way the world actually works.